Hello everyone, Dr. Mike here, TCOM 101. Hey, in the next couple of videos, we're going to start focusing on some of the business strategies of the big media companies and the tech giants. Now, it's important to understand some of these business strategies because you'll have to apply these. When you profile a company, you'll have to apply this knowledge. So, here are the business strategies we're going to talk about in the next two videos. We'll talk about conglomeratization, globalization, media synergy, horizontal integration, and vertical integration. These are all important concepts to understand. Now, we've already covered conglomerates. A conglomerate is a giant diversified company made up of different and perhaps related businesses, a big complex company. All right, now, when you pick a company later in the semester to profile, I want you to look for evidence of any of these strategies in the company that you are profiling. So please try and understand these concepts and then apply them when you're doing some of the research later in this course. All right, the first strategy I want to talk about is something called vertical integration. This is a way to concentrate ownership, and you do it by acquiring companies that are in closely related businesses that are all part of sort of the same supply chain. Now, in the media worlds, this typically includes controlling both program production and program distribution. If you can control those two businesses, you have a vertically integrated situation. So here's a classic example. Imagine that you're a film studio and you are producing movies that you hope will be blockbusters. Well, imagine that you also own a chain of movie theaters. A big chain of theaters where those movies are exhibited and displayed. Now imagine the situation where your company owned both the film studio and the theaters. You would be vertically integrated. You would control both the production and the distribution, and you could use this to your advantage. You could give your movies preferential treatment. Now, this actually is no longer permitted. This arrangement just described, a famous U.S. Supreme Court case, United States versus Paramount Pictures. Back in the 1940s, there was concern about too much concentration of ownership. And U.S. versus Paramount Pictures was a famous Supreme Court decision that held that movie studios could not also own the movie theater chains. They had to divest or sell off the movie theaters. Now, vertical integration, again, is when a company owns different businesses. They're in this very same chain of production and distribution. You know, the classic example of a vertically integrated company that the government broke up was John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil. Thank goodness we had a courageous female journalist, Ida Tarbell, who exposed the truth about how Rockefeller put together an oil monopoly. It was vertically integrated because he owned all parts of the production process, the oil fields, the refineries, the distribution, the railroads and the pipelines, and the retail outlets. When you control everything in the supply chain, you have a vertically integrated company. The government broke up Standard Oil into several smaller companies. But the government has allowed a lot of vertical integration to occur in the media and tech worlds. A great example of this happened in 2011. Comcast, the big cable company, the distributor, got vertical by purchasing NBC Universal, which creates content. Again, if you control content, production, and distribution, you've created a vertically integrated company. Now, the government approved of this merger with some provisions. For example, Comcast has to give equal treatment to all of NBC's competitors in the distribution pipelines. A very, very similar deal went down in 2018 when AT&T, the giant phone company, the distribution company, got vertical when it purchased Time Warner, a giant content creator, a media company, which is now called Warner Media. So the AT&T Time Warner merger is another great example of vertical integration. How about Netflix? That's another prime example of vertical integration. Well, Netflix, started off doing DVD by mail, and then it started selling streaming of films and movies, and it still does that, but it also produces its own original content. So when you're creating and distributing content, this is vertical integration. One more example of vertical integration, Apple, the tech giant. Think about this, it has retail locations to sell its products, as well as manufacturing facilities around the globe. It controls a lot of the supply and distribution chain. So Apple is another example of a vertically integrated company. Okay, one more to consider. Live Nation, which merged with Ticketmaster, that created a vertically integrated entertainment company. Think about this. It owns and manages and represents the artist. It produces the shows, and it even sells the tickets to those shows. That's an example of vertical integration. Okay, another way a company can concentrate ownership is through horizontal integration. This is concentrating ownership by acquiring companies that are all in the exact same business or almost the same business. Like if you had a chain of many newspapers or a chain of radio stations or a chain of local cable TV outlets, then you would be following horizontal integration as your business strategy. Think about the huge deal in 2017 when Disney purchased a lot of Fox, most of its entertainment, its movie and TV assets. Okay, that was more of a horizontal deal. Disney, which owns a number of film studios, acquired more in the way of film studios and TV production. So the Disney merger with Fox was really a horizontal strategy. Okay, here's a couple of media companies that really are excellent examples of horizontal integration. Gannett, the giant newspaper chain, and iHeartMedia, the country's #1 radio group owner. Let's talk a little bit about Gannett. It operates 82 newspapers, daily newspapers across the country. So that's horizontal integration. Its flagship paper is called USA Today. It's a very excellent, I think, kind of center, objective news site, okay? USA Today. Reaches millions of readers. Gannett also happens to own a small chain of TV stations, okay? 23 TV stations. So there's a couple of examples of horizontal integration within Gannett. But think of it as the big newspaper chain. It happens to own several of the very important daily newspapers right here in Indiana. The daily newspapers in Lafayette, Marion, Muncie, and Indianapolis, the Indy Star, are all Gannett newspapers. Another horizontally integrated media company, is iHeartMedia. iHeartMedia operates more than 850 radio stations in America. 850 radio stations. That is horizontal integration. In fact, iHeartMedia owns 4 radio stations right here in Indiana, in the Indianapolis market, including WFBQ, WNDE, WOLT, and WZRL. 4 different radio stations in one market owned by one company, iHeartMedia, America's #1 radio chain. All right, another example of horizontal integration any kind of chain store, the Disney stores, the Apple stores, and Best Buy. Think about that, over 1,200 Best Buy stores located around the globe. That's an example of horizontal integration. Okay, we've started off with a couple of the important business strategies, vertical and horizontal integration. I hope you understand these and you can look at the company you're profiling and see if there's any evidence of either of these strategies going on. Next time we'll continue our discussion of some of the business strategies. Until then, Dr. Mike saying so long, take care of yourself.